In winter, Everest is a fortress of bare black rock. By summer, it's buried alive in snow, not by storms, but by a silent war between drifting flakes and raging west winds. In 1933, that transformation wasn't just weather. It was the difference between a clear path to the summit and an impossible wall of ice.
It's 2:20 a.m. I'm still buried in the Himalayan Club Journals, century-old field notes from the Himalayas. It's like diving deep into the documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s. The journals cover everything, from indigenous wisdom, cultural myths, to epic expeditions and groundbreaking discoveries. These forgotten stories are brought to life by synthetic voices in the Himalayan Journals podcast. Subscribe, zone out, binge, and pass it to a fellow mountain junkie.
In winter, Mount Everest, as seen from the base camp, showed a dark rock face. Even the less steep slabs where scree had accumulated were largely free from snow. This appearance persisted until May or June. What little snow fell in winter soon evaporated or blew away in the powerful and almost continuous west wind. The change to summer conditions took place at no very definite time. When it came, the north face became dead white with snow, and only a few bands of rock, probably those that were actually vertical, still stood out in black. This change, so significant to climbers, was not associated with any obvious change in local weather. There was no sudden increase in temperature, cloudiness, or precipitation, and the prevailing wind remained from the west. The snowing up of the mountain was due to gradual readjustments between snowfall and the removal by wind. With summer, the winds on average were less powerful, and precipitation gradually increased until accumulation exceeded removal. When and how the mountain regained its winter look was not known because the latest any party had stayed was in 1921, when the reconnaissance left in early September, with the upper north face still deep under snow. Towards the end of April and in May 1933, while the expedition established the glacier camps and worked out the way to the North Pole, the weather resembled that of 1922 and 1924. There were blizzards and snow. The double-walled Arctic tents and the greater acclimatization from a slower advance probably prevented more than one forced retirement. In May at the base camp at 16,500 feet, the average minimum temperature was plus 17 degrees Fahrenheit. At Camp the 2, about 19,500 feet, from the 7th to the 17th May, the average minimum was minus 8 degrees Fahrenheit, and on the 11th of May, the party recorded minus 21 degrees Fahrenheit, the lowest temperature of the expedition. By day, when out of the wind, the sun often felt pleasantly warm, though shelter was hard to find. Nights were usually calm. The wind arose between 10 a.m. and noon and reached at least force 4 on the Beaufort scale in the afternoon. Higher on the mountain, the winds were more continuous and much more powerful. Snow fell on the East Rongbuk Glacier on 14 days in May, usually in small amounts. About 5 inches fell on the night of the 2nd May, and about 6 inches fell on the nights of the 9th and 10th May at Camp 3-0. On the 8th of May, the upper basin below the North Col showed wind-polished ice. After the falls of the 9th and 10th, bare ice did not appear again there. Several days at Camp Ilia brought violent wind. On the night of the 17th May, it broke one ash rib of an Arctic tent. Despite the winds, summer snowing up began at 21,000 feet on this exposed glacier, before mid-May. Camp 5 at 26,500 feet was established on the 22nd of May. The day was sunny. On the exposed North Arete, the wind was probably never more than 10 miles an hour. Scrambling over scree and low-angled rocks, the party did not find snow increased the difficulties. Calm climbing days were rare. On the 23rd and 24th May, the wind prevented an advance to Camp 6. On the night of the 28th May, the minimum temperature at Camp 5 was minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and at 8 a.m. next day, when the party set off with the porters for Camp 6, in a wind of about 10 to 15 miles an hour, the temperature was plus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. During the climb to Camp 6, they worked across the face to the right and then up. This proved less satisfactory than the usual ridge route, and a fairly steep rock barrier had to be negotiated. On its sheltered side, there was soft powder snow, the beginning of the summer accumulation. While J. L. Longland took the porters down after Camp 6 was established, a snowfall came without much wind from gently drifting cumulus clouds. That small fall hindered movement next day on the yellow slabs. On the 30th of May, probably only half the yellow slabs carried a fine powder of single crystal snow, but it occupied the flatter parts that would have been chosen for foothold. A sprinkling, covering cracks and roughness on the overlapping roof like slabs that form the upper mountain, was enough to hinder a party seriously. The steeper rock band from the first and second steps, with the same sprinkling, was in a condition that made its traverse difficult or impossible. On the 1st of June, E. E. Shipton and F. S. Smythe met worse conditions due to a day of intermittent snow. During June, the mountain was watched from the base camp and the Glacier camps. The wind remained from the west and seemed powerful, but precipitation continuously exceeded removal. By the 10th of June, the small tent at Camp 6 could not be seen through the astronomical telescope. Mornings were usually clear, and the wind was low. About 8 or 9 a.m., cumulus clouds began to struggle over the low coals, were caught by the west wind, and thickened. Between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., they blotted out the summit, and snow fell from these clouds. Above them, there was often false cirrus. There was some correlation with weather in Bengal. On the 29th May, the monsoon current over the eastern Himalaya was reported at 18,000 feet. On the 31st, it was very active from Darjeeling to Mussoorie. It did not then reach the north side, but the slightly increased precipitation and cloudiness during high climbing were likely effects from the south. From the 19th to the 22nd June, cumulus clouds blew up from the southeast and brought considerable snow. This appeared to be the Bay of Bengal monsoon current, reaching the north side. The basin at the head of the East Rongbuk was alive with avalanches, likely due to new snow and perhaps a higher temperature. These were the only days in June when southeast winds predominated. Because the low-level monsoon rarely reached the north side, it was useful to call the weather that began on the 30th of May monsoon conditions. Information from Dr. S. N. Sen of the Indian Meteorological Department was valuable for timing a final attempt. From the 1933 expedition, more was known of the route, the climbing difficulties, acclimatization, and deterioration, and there was one more year of weather data. L. R. Wager wrote that the journey through Tibet could be made a month earlier without hardship. The glacier camps in Camp 4 on the North Col could then be occupied a fortnight earlier. Those who acclimatized quickly might attempt the mountain in the last half of May on any relatively calm days. They would face more severe winds and cold than in June, but the mountain would almost certainly be free from snow. The slower acclimatizers, kept in reserve at lower glacier camps, would make their attempt if, as in 1924 but not in 1933, good weather came in the first 10 days of June. He gave a general account elsewhere, in the appendix to Mount Everest, 1933.